Royalty, royalty, power to the chosen people.
Shalom and welcome to Biblical Hebrew Lesson 2. Today we're going to do a brief overview. We're going to learn our second letter, and we're also going to go over the meanings behind each of these letters and how they directly connect in order to form words that are concrete and meaningful. Okay, so last week we had the letter Aleph, and we went over the Paleo form and the modern script form. And the reason why we did this was because the modern script is what is in a lot of our printed text. The Paleo form is what was used by the ancients, the Phoenicians, the Canaanites, obviously the Hebrews and other Semitic cultures. And we also went over the pictographical form. Part of your homework was to go through and to write these letters. So we had the Aleph that is written in Paleo form like this, and then we have the modern Hebrew Aleph, which is written like this. So that should have been pretty much the format as you went through those squares on the grid and wrote in each of your Alephbet letters, especially the Aleph, focusing there because that was part of our homework. The next thing, and its numerical value. And so we had a numerical value of 1. So we also learned in the homework our vowel points. So the two that you definitely had were the kamets, and it makes a ah sound like father or aqua. So it's the long A sound. And you had the patak, and that's also a ah sound. So during your homework, you were going through and looking at these letters and looking for that vowel marking underneath in order to get a pronunciation. We also talked about briefly in our first lesson why we're doing this. So if you have any questions, please refer back to that first introductory lesson. We're going to do what I'm going to be calling a treasure. So even though we haven't covered all of these letters, as I give you a letter and we review, I'm going to go back and give you something to glean from to actually bring understanding to each of these letters. So today we're going to look at the letter Aleph. What we're going to learn is that the Aleph, just like every other letter, is the Aleph, and here it is in Paleo form, but it also can be written out as a word. So you wouldn't just show an Aleph, but you would actually write the word Aleph out for the letter Aleph. So in English, it would look like this, Aleph, but in Hebrew, it would look like this. And that spells Aleph. Now, I know you're not familiar with all of these. You know the Aleph. The second letter is a lamed, and it's a staff, and it means control or toward or an ox goad, and the pei is a mouth or an opening. Now, the Aleph has a numerical value of 1, but the word Aleph actually has a similar numerical value as well. So what we're going to do now is actually add up the numerical value for these letters, and it's going to show us how the Aleph spelled out corresponds with the Aleph letter. So Aleph, Lamed, this is a peso feet. Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, and Pei is 80. If we add these up, we get the number 111. Now, what's interesting about the number 1 and this number 111 is that the number 1 is the only number that can go into every single number that we have. And so 1 becomes the source. So immediately we see that the Aleph is 1, and it's the source for everything else. So if we take this 111 and we break it down, what we'll get is 1, 1, 10 ones, and 100 ones. Yet all of these ones come from one singular 1, just multiplied or added over and over again. And this gives us our picture of Yah as a source. We call Yah as a term, most of us say the Most High. The term is Elohim or Elohim, and it comes from the plural of the Most High El, or the Most High God. Well, God is is a more recent term. What the ancients would have called an El or an Aleph Lamed, is a power. And so Yah is the most high power. And it's in a plural, so we have it spelled Elohim. And what we get is this plural because Yah is seen plural not because he's made up of multiple gods, but because his power goes out into multiple areas, or it is the source of multiple things. Yah is not only the source of power for mankind, but Yah is also sustaining the universe, and his power is the power or the life or the chai that is in everything around us. And so in Elohim, we see the most high power, meaning that this El is the source of all other L's and supersedes all other L's. Now, there are, from that root Aleph, and I call it a root because Aleph, in this form, Aleph, Lamed, Pei, will actually show up in other words that'll actually describe the attributes of Yah and how we as humans relate to him on different levels. The first level is the master level. Yah is the master, and everything else is subject to that master. And so that Hebrew word is Aluf. And immediately you can see the Aleph, the Lamed, and the Pei. Okay, the next level is a teacher. Once we see Yah as master or creator or the one who is sustaining or the source of everything, then we're going to see him as a teacher, where he takes all the things that he's created and begins to reveal to us things about himself, teaching us about himself and his attributes, and also teaching us how to relate to the things that he's created in order to be proper stewards over them and to also please and bring glory to him. So that word is spelled like this. That's Ofna. So you have Aleph, Aluf, Ofna, and the last one is very interesting because what we're going to do, and the word is wondrous, is we're going to actually see the same root just backwards. So it's Pei, Lamed, Aleph. And the word is Pele, and it means wondrous. And so after we've seen Yah as master, and after we've experienced him as teacher, we get the opportunity to see his wonder. And Yah is one. And we know this from our Shema. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Echad is one. So that is our little treasure for today. All right, now we're going to move on to the letter Bet. This was also in your homework, and you may not have been entirely familiar with it. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into the letter Bet. Bet is written in the early Hebrew in this pictographical form. In the Middle Hebrew, it's written as a bet, looking more like this, still kind of similar. You have late period, 400 BC, it's written that way, so Babylonian Assyrian time period, and then modern book or print or script form for today. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the letter Bet and how it has two sounds. From your homework, you might have saw the letter Bet and how it's written two different ways. One has a dot. This dot is called a dagesh. D-A-G-E-S-H. To keep it simple, when you see the dot inside or when you don't see the dot, it changes the sound of certain letters. And we'll cover some of these letters throughout our study. Right now we're going to deal with the Bet. So when you see the dagesh inside of the Bet, makes the B sound. When the dagesh is not inside of the Bet, it makes the V sound. How I remember it, it's very elementary, but when there's a dot, there's a baby on the inside of that womb. When there's no dot, it's void. And so, B, baby, the little dagesh, V, there's nothing there, it's void. Very, very simple. It'll really help you. It's very, very elementary, but it'll help you when you're seeing these letters And so when you're going through, make sure that you're distinguishing between the B and the V sound, because that does make a difference when you get into reading in your Tanakh or Torah, when we start going through and actually reading verses, because that's actually going to come around really fast. So you want to keep these things in your head. For the purposes of understanding what bet means, we're actually going to use the earliest pictographical form. So the bet has a numerical value of 2. It's the second letter of the Hebrew Alephbet, so it's really simple. Aleph 1, Bet 2. And so on your Hebrew chart, it's represented as a tent, or to be inside, or a womb. So I'm going to explain each of those. So at the front of the tent, you have an opening. And this opening gives us one entrance and one exit. So there's no other place to enter or exit, similar to the womb. What happens is that the seed is housed in the inward part of the house, so in this portion. And then there's a wall or a separation that is then a place of protection. What the father does is the father, in the Hebraic culture, sits at the gate or the opening of the house in order to protect that which is inside, because that which is inside is precious. So the father sits and he watches and patrols what goes on, not only outside, but also inside of the home, and we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so the womb, just like the tent, has one entrance and one exit. It houses the inside of the seed. The tent is because it's a nomadic floor plan, as in an aerial view, and there you can see the wall that would separate, so you walk into the tent, and then inside is here. And also in means to be in. It's enclosed, it's safe, and it's guarded by the father. Okay. We're gonna deal with our first combination. You had these 2 letters in your homework, so this should be fairly similar. Your first 2 letter combinations are Aleph and Bet. And that's where we get our first word. So the 2 letters that are in the alphabet, the first one and the second one, give us our first word. And if you have the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible, which you should, if not, there is a PDF form on the website, and I'll put the link in the bio. But we're going to take actually the first concrete picture from here, and we're going to expound upon it. And so it'll be actually the first picture that you will see when you open up your lexicon. One thing I want to add is that just like our dictionaries in English go A, B, C, D, E, F, G in alphabetical order, the Hebrew lexicons and concordances and all these things go in alphabetical order. It's going to help you a lot, and it's going to save you a lot of time trying to figure out how to find things. If you're trying to find something that starts with Aleph, it's going to be with the Alephs. If you're going to go Bet, it's going to be with the Bet, not like A, B, C, because then the next one is Gimel. And so you'll be able to find stuff a lot faster. If you're looking for something, just like an English dictionary, and it's A-S, then you go to the A's and the S's. Well, here, we're going to go Aleph and Bet. So it should be the first one in your lexicon. The Aleph has a numerical value of 1. We learned this. And the Bet has a numerical value of 2. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into what I was talking about earlier, which is gematria. Nothing fancy. It's that when you add up Hebrew letters and numbers, you get a sum. And so the sum of 1 plus 2, or because we're going from right to left. Remember that when you're doing your Hebrew work, right to left. So it will seem a little backwards at first, but you'll find it very surprising that it becomes like second nature. So 1 plus 2 equals 3. Very simple. And so the 3 is then going to give us the meaning of these 2 combined letters. Now we know independently the Aleph is an ox, strength, leader, champion, mighty one. And we know the Bet is a house, tent, womb, inn. So mean to bring forth the fruit. Which is very interesting. So it has to do with bringing forth the fruit or sustaining. So you need an Aleph, or strong leader, and a Bet, a house, tent, womb, in order to continue the seed. These 2 things do not operate independently of one another. And so in the Hebrew culture, the first place that we see all pictures, and we spoke about this before, is in the immediate or the family that we're surrounded by. So in our family, in our land, and in how we connect with the two. So when you look at the Ab, right? That's what that is, Aleph, Bet, Ab. What you're going to get a picture of is a picture of the father. So, father, and just to phonetically spell it, sorry, I was going to write that backwards, Ab. So, Aleph, Bet, Ab, Ab. And the Ab, or the father, is the picture of these two complete things. Now, in Genesis 1:1, we get how this even makes sense. Yah is complete. A lot of people, because of Western culture, view Yah as all masculine. Now, I'm not talking about all male. Male and female are different. Masculine and feminine are also different. So those are two different terms. A person can be male and not masculine. And a person can be female and not feminine. A person can be male. Okay, so what you have is an Aleph and a Bet. When Yah creates man and woman in the beginning, so going back to our original point, he takes from himself and he completely splits the attributes of himself and puts them all into the male. So he gives the male all of who he is. So the man is then the full representation of who Yah is. And then Yah takes from the male, takes half of what was in the male, and then creates a woman. Because he takes all of that which is feminine and puts it in the female. And he takes all of that which is masculine, puts it into the male. And so the two of them, when they join together, one, they become one, but they also represent the picture of how the combination of the Aleph and the Bet brings forth fruit. And it's the idea of continuing or sustaining the family. To sustain the family is to push forth to the next generation. Okay, so a father then, if this is a picture of a father exclusively, should be balanced. So a father should be knowledgeable about every dynamic of his family. So because the father encompasses all, he has to know, he has to be completely Aleph, but also completely in tune with the Bet, or with the house. Okay? So the reverse of that, because the cool thing about Hebrew is that you can't really manipulate something to make it mean what you want it to mean unless you change the definitions. But if I flip that around and I put the Bet and then the Aleph, I still get the same number. 2 plus 1 equals 3. But in reverse, if you look into your lexicon and you go to the Bet, and the first picture, the first grouping of letters will be Ba. So it means to lead or to bear or to enter. So then you have the Aleph, who is now entering the Bet, which is also the same picture of to continue the seed. But you also get to lead. Now it looks kind of backwards because in English, we view things the opposite a lot of times with the ancient world. So if the Bet is in front, then most people would assume that then that means the Bet is then leading. That's not necessarily true. In Hebrew, a person would lead from behind. And that'll give us insight into another picture, and I'll lay that one down first. In Hebrew, the future is behind you, and the past is in front of you. So the Aleph then, in order to lead from behind, would be behind, because behind I can see everything that then is going, I've seen everything that is going to occur, so I can lead you to the proper places. So the knowledgeable one then would steer from behind. It's a very good agricultural picture. We use a lot of tractors nowadays, but if we were to look at the agricultural pictures of people who plowed with animals, then the person who was yoked or controlling the animal would then be leading the animal, but from behind. So you're thinking that the animal is doing the leading, but actually the person who is controlling the reins or has the lamed or the ox goad is controlling the animal in its path. And what often happens is over time, once that animal becomes knowledgeable about the path on which it should walk, then the master or the person who is over the cattle would then place a less experienced ox with that old ox who already knows how to tread the path. that's the same picture of this, where although it looks like the house or the family is in front, it is actually the Aleph who is directing and leading the family into the direction, because he has already seen and experienced the path and is in connection, obviously we're talking about a father, with Yah, and is taking his direction in order to lead the family into righteousness. So this idea, when we flip it around, deals with placing something, which is obviously the family, in front of yourself. So the two things that we dealt with today are those two letters that you had in your homework. So Ab, which is father, and Ba, which you had defined as came, right? Or to lead, or to bear, or to enter. And so from these pictures, we get our first picture of the Father, and also our Heavenly Father, which is the one who not only looks over the house, but also leads the house and is the strong leader of the house. So there is no contending with the Father for his role, because not only does he know both roles and is knowledgeable about everything in his house, but he's also the one who brings life or gives life and continues the house through the bet. But he's also the one who bears or leads or also sacrifices for the house. In these pictures, we learn that the Aleph and the Bet, because they're the first two letters, don't operate independently of one another. If you don't combine these letters, and these are the only two letters you have, you really have an incomplete picture. But when both of these are combined, we get our first initial picture of not only the family, but of our Heavenly Father and how he relates to all of us, but also our physical families and how we are to relate to one another. So we'll keep building as we learn new words. And in the homework for this week, you're going to be going back over and doing the lesson again, keeping these things in mind, seeing these pictures and how the definitions, even in your Learning Biblical Hebrew workbook, are stemming from these meanings. So for the study and review, we're going to go over lesson 1 to review for your homework. You're going to be, again, lesson 2, it's on pages 17 and 18. The books, the one I showed you today, and also the book with the homework in it, is on the website. For Hebrew counting, I'll also post a link, because we're going to do a little bit of counting. We're going to learn how to count from 1 to 10. And so there's a lady who does counting. Her name is Tahila. And so I'll post a link where she's going to explain to you how to count from 1 to 10 and give you some ideas of how it sounds when you're adding, masculine or feminine objects into counting. Also, for Alephbet practice, you're going to use those grids. You're going to definitely be writing your Aleph and your Bet, but also, if you feel comfortable, try writing all of them all the way through in Paleo and modern script block form. And then also post a link to an Alephbet song that'll help you learn the Alephbet, just like you learned your ABCs. So that'll conclude for today. So I just want you to focus on that, and I'll see you next week.
Royalty. Royalty. Power to the chosen people.